Hi everyone, it's Darin Triolo with Triolo Realty Group at Keller Williams Realty. And welcome to this first in a series of behind the scenes of a real estate transaction. Oftentimes when we meet with our clients, we find that if they've had a real estate process before, they're always like, oh my God, I just signed a whole bunch of paperwork, I bought a house or I sold a house. And there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes that if they're not working with an experienced agent or an experienced group of professionals, that they might just not know how the process actually works. So today, I'd like to bring one of our superstars into the studio here. I've got with me today Escrow Officer Extraordinaire, Jamie Zinggeler with Affinity Escrow. And Jamie, I brought you in today because I think a lot of times our clients don't even necessarily understand what escrow is. Or how it all works, and it's such a critical part to the real estate transaction. So now I know you've been at it a really long time, but tell me a little bit about your background and when you got into escrow and kind of how long you've been at it.
Sure, so I've been at it just a few years, running up on 28 here.
Oh God, okay, just a few.
Yeah, I always say I started as an infant, so that way, no one knows what our true age is as a woman. But I've been doing it a long time, closed quite a few escrows, over 20,000.
Oh my gosh.
So I've got a lot of experience in, and I've started out, like I said, being the receptionist, the run around, do the grunt stuff, until, of course, running my own desk and now owning my own company.
Awesome,
So
awesome. Yeah, and I think actually
journey.
our relationship goes back to about 2005, I think, is when we first started working together. You were at another company. I actually got introduced to you by one of my mentors in my office because, as a new agent, it's so important for us to surround ourselves with people that are more experienced than we are, because it's just critical that when we engage our clients that they're working with professionals in the other important parts to the process. So,
right, and having resources from those mentors to be able to learn from them as we start out in our business and grow.
Absolutely, yeah. So I know we got connected way back then, and we've done a ton of transactions together, which has been amazing, and it actually makes us and our team look really good in front of our clients. So well, for those of our clients that are actually watching today, tell me a little bit about how would you explain the escrow process and where do you get involved in a real estate transaction?
So the escrow process, escrow comes into it once there's an accepted contract, of course. So I usually explain it in a simplistic way like this. I'm sitting down with the buyer and seller, and I'll say, I'm the third impartial party. I don't represent the buyer or the seller. I hold documents and the money until conditions are met, and then I swap those. Seller gets his money, and the buyer gets the title documents to the property. So that's our simplistic version of what goes on, because quite frankly, sometimes I don't think it's necessary for a buyer and seller to always be concerned. They have a lot of things going on with the process of everything that I'm doing. It's good for them to know, but I don't want them to worry in any way about that. It's handled and taken care of.
And that's huge, because I know that when we've had clients that we introduce you into the process, we always let them know that, look, we kind of refer to you as the glue to the transaction. The escrow part of the real estate transaction is not the sexiest part of the process, but it's one of the most critical. Because
we're the center. We're the center of that. So we're dealing with everybody. We're talking to buyers, sellers, both real estate agents, transaction coordinators, loan officers, processors, the lender, title. We're the person who's communicating with all of those entities in the transaction. And keeping the ball rolling smoothly along. With all of those individuals.
And that's huge, because I know from our perspective, from my perspective as the agent, whether I'm representing a seller or a buyer, I want my clients to feel comfortable and confident in the process. And the last thing I want them feeling like they have to be the one that's doing the communicating with other parties. It's really interesting. Sometimes we inherit new clients that have had bad experiences where they're the ones making all the phone calls to the lender and the title and the escrow, and it kind of blows my mind a little bit when I take them on as clients, because I'm like, no, you don't have to do any of that. This is why we bring Jamie in. She's actually going to be handling all of that process. And so there's a lot of value that I think working with someone like yourself that has done 20,000 escrows. I mean, you can't trade that off for the new escrow company that just popped up that's doing, 10 or 20 escrows versus the amount that you have in your background, your experience.
And it's the background that we have. It allows us obviously to troubleshoot, or even sometimes it's just we keep the flow of the transaction going, and we're troubleshooting in the background, of course, with you guys sometimes, sometimes just taking care of things. So that experience allows us to have a really good escrow process where the agents and the buyers and sellers can count on the fact that we know the end goal, the close date, what needs to be done by that date, and we have a really good process set up so that it just flows. We know when we need to meet with the seller and the timing on that, when we should be talking to the buyer, what's next, and those steps, we have it all set out so that there isn't, oh, forgot to do that.
Yeah.
Oh, experience does that. And then the other thing in our office we do is we're always educating ourselves. As you know, this is a changing environment, changing business, so we're constantly going to classes and seminars and conferences with other escrow people and sharing. And I know, sometimes unfortunately there's other escrow companies out there that aren't doing that, but we feel that's key to being able to produce a good product, which is good service and a good escrow process.
Right, yeah, you bring up a really good point, because the ability for you to troubleshoot comes from that background, that education, that experience. And I'm sure there have been times, I know even for our own processes, where you've done things to help the process or help the client, where you've troubleshooted maybe an issue or a problem, and you've come up with a solution. Many times the seller or the buyer is not even aware of the things that you've had to do to fix it. And can you think of a couple of examples, or an example or two, of when you've kind of gone above and beyond for the client? Maybe they didn't even realize it, but you helped get that process through.
I have one in particular that comes to mind. We had a couple that had a bucket list trip to Australia in the middle of nowhere in Australia. And so we weren't able to, because it was a probate, we weren't able to have a grant deed signed before they left. We had to wait until the probate documentation was in line. But they had left, and we still needed to close up the transaction. So our office was able to figure out how to, they couldn't go to an American consulate, which is the normal thing when someone's in another country. So we found an attorney close to where they were at. We were able to get the attorney in Australia to do the notary, to get that handled. And then after that, you have to get an apostille certificate of a notary. So then we had to find a service in a major city in Australia, get the the original documents from that attorney that had done the notary to the apostille service, and they then in turn do the certification and then get the originals back. So we were able to—
a lot of moving pieces.
Yes, yes, and we were able to track all that down, do all that, and just take care of it. And the transaction closed in a timely manner.
And that's such a great example, because the clients maybe didn't realize that their trip in the middle of an escrow was going to cause this kind of disruption in their process, and you guys kind of took it on and saw it through to the finish line. And that's been my experience working with you for as long as I have. I know for our clients and those of you that are watching today, the reason why we want to share with you Jamie and her background and her experience is because it definitely translates to a good experience for you as our client. And even for those of you watching that are other realtors, I highly recommend that you reach out to Jamie and make her your new escrow officer like we have. And Jamie, thanks so much for your time today. I really appreciate you coming in here and sharing a little bit about your business.
Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. And for any of you out there that have any questions for me or would like to be introduced to Jamie, by all means, give me a call at 858-206-8000. You can also reach me via email, Darin@triolorealty.com. And stay tuned. We'll continue this behind the scenes of real estate series coming soon. Thanks so much.